The disappearance of the three lighthouse keepers from the Flannan Isles is one of the most puzzling and enduring mysteries in the history of Scotland. It happened in December 1900 on a small, desolate group of rocky islands called the Flannan Isles, part of the Outer Hebrides in the northwest of Scotland. On these islands, there was a lighthouse that guided ships through the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic. The lighthouse, located on the largest island, Eilean Moor, was manned by three keepers: Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur. Marshall was the assistant lighthouse keeper at the time of the disappearance. He was a responsible man with experience in maritime work. Marshall was in charge of keeping the lighthouse log. His attention to detail in the log and his seriousness at work presented him as someone reliable and committed. Ducat was the chief lighthouse keeper, the highest in rank and responsibility. He had a long career as a keeper, with over 20 years of experience at various lighthouses across Scotland. He was described as a stable and serious man. Ducat had a family waiting for him on the mainland, reinforcing the idea that he was someone with strong personal ties, unlikely to take unnecessary risks or act impulsively. His experience and calm demeanor made him a competent leader in difficult situations. MacArthur, also known as the Occasional, was not a full-time lighthouse keeper like the other two, but a substitute who filled in when necessary. He was known for having a strong, rough, and somewhat temperamental character. Some reports describe him as volatile, yet dedicated and hardworking. He was a veteran sailor, accustomed to harsh conditions. The Flannan Isles lighthouse was first lit in 1899, and its normal operation required three lighthouse keepers at all times, with a fourth rotating on the mainland. In December 1900, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur were on duty. The three men worked at the lighthouse under extreme conditions of isolation and weather. For months, their only company was each other, facing storms, giant waves, and the solitude of the ocean. Keepers in such remote places as the Flannan Isles knew they had to rely completely on one another, as any emergency, whether an accident or a storm, could mean help would take days to arrive. On December 15, 1900, the lighthouse was supposed to send signals to guide nearby ships. But the steamship SS Archdor, sailing from Philadelphia to Leith, Scotland, noticed that the lighthouse was not operational. This was highly unusual, but due to adverse weather conditions, it was not possible to investigate immediately. On December 26, 1900, the relief vessel Hesperus arrived at the islands with lighthouse keeper Joseph Moore, who was to relieve one of the men. Upon arrival at the island, the crew of the Hesperus noticed no signs of life. The lighthouse, usually a noisy place due to the presence of the keepers, was eerily silent. The men did not come out to greet them, and when the ship's siren was sounded, there was no response. Moore decided to disembark to investigate. And what did they find? Moore headed to the lighthouse, and what he found there was deeply disturbing. There were no signs of the three keepers. The door of the lighthouse was closed but not locked. Inside, everything seemed to be in order. The kitchen showed that a meal had been prepared but not consumed. The beds were unmade, and the lighthouse lamps were cleaned and supplied. The only thing missing was the three men. However, outside the lighthouse, a troubling clue was discovered. The waterproof gear of one of the keepers, Donald MacArthur, was hanging inside the lighthouse. This was very unusual, as no keeper would have gone outside during a storm without protective gear, suggesting that he had left in a hurry or under exceptional circumstances. After his initial inspection of the lighthouse, Moore began searching the island, hoping to find some sign of the men. He investigated the surrounding areas, including the paths and stairs leading to the docks. One of the docks showed significant damage. Railings were bent, and a supply box had been swept away by the water. He also found ropes scattered on the upper platform. Despite his efforts, Moore found no trace of the men or any clear sign of what had happened to them. Shaken by what he had discovered and after a fruitless search, Moore returned to the Hesperus and reported his findings to the captain and crew. It was then that Captain James Harvey decided to send an urgent telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board reporting the disappearance of the keepers. The telegram sent to the board's headquarters in Edinburgh read as follows: A terrible catastrophe has occurred at the Flannan. The three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On arrival this afternoon, no sign of life was visible on the island. Fired a rocket but no response. Later on, Joseph Moore would play a crucial role in the subsequent investigation. After the discovery of the disappearance, an official investigation was launched, led by Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board, who personally knew the three missing men. Muirhead traveled to Eilean Moor on December 29, 1900, a few days after Joseph Moore's initial discovery. His mission was to personally inspect the lighthouse and the island for clues that might explain what had happened to Marshall, Ducat, and MacArthur. Upon arriving at the island, Muirhead began by reviewing every part of the lighthouse and the surrounding facilities, confirming the details that Moore had already observed. Muirhead paid special attention to the external areas of the lighthouse and the surroundings of the island, especially the docks and the places where the keepers worked. During this inspection, he found clear signs that a storm had recently hit the island with great force. The railings near the docks were twisted and damaged, and some anchoring elements and a supply box had been swept away, likely by a giant wave. These findings were crucial to the official theory that Muirhead later developed. The damage indicated that a natural force had severely affected the area, which may have caused the disappearance of the men if they were trying to secure equipment during the bad weather. The investigation seemed to be heading in the right direction. The theory that the keepers had been swept away by the sea due to a giant wave gained traction. But one particular discovery would add mysteries that seemed to have no explanation. This discovery was the logbook entries left by Thomas Marshall, who was in charge of noting the daily events. The log entries revealed that the keepers had been experiencing a strong storm since December 12, consistent with the theory that a storm may have played a role in their disappearance. But Marshall wrote that his companions were behaving strangely. Ducat was very quiet, and MacArthur had been seen crying, which was extremely unusual for a man of his rough character. What could explain such unusual behavior from both keepers? On December 13th, Marshall wrote that the storm was still raging, and that the three men had been praying, which was also strange, as they were safe inside the lighthouse, a structure built to withstand storms. To this, we must add one more peculiar fact: the weather conditions that Thomas had described in his log, where he mentioned a severe storm battering them for days, were contradictory to the reported weather in the area. Meteorological records show that at the time of the disappearance, no extreme storms were reported in the region. In fact, the weather during those days was described as calm, making it less likely that a giant wave had hit the island. Despite all these uncertainties, Muirhead concluded in his final report that the disappearance of Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur was the result of an accident, specifically a giant wave that swept the keepers into the sea. Although this explanation was the most logical based on the available evidence, the bodies were never recovered, leaving room for other theories. Muirhead wrote the following in his report: "Unfortunately, I have to conclude that the men have been swept away by the sea, either while securing equipment or inspecting damage caused by the storms. The damage to the structures and the absence of the men suggest that something catastrophic occurred on the west coast of the island." Despite the official conclusion, Muirhead's report did not answer all the questions and left room for speculation. The giant wave theory seemed the most probable explanation, but details like the strange behavior of the keepers recorded in the log, and the fact that there were no severe storms reported in the area on December 15th, led some to question whether it was truly a simple accident. Over the years, several theories have emerged about what could have happened to the three lighthouse keepers. These range from theories of murder to the supernatural abductions, curses, spirits, or even sirens. The most accepted theory, and the one officially supported by Superintendent Robert Muirhead, is that the three keepers were victims of a giant wave. This theory suggests that a series of violent storms hit the island, causing considerable damage to the docks and railings. It is believed that the men were trying to secure equipment or repair damage when a huge wave swept them out to sea. A more sinister theory posits that one of the keepers, probably Donald MacArthur, who was known for his temper, suffered a bout of madness and attacked his companions, killing them and throwing their bodies into the sea, before perishing himself. This theory would be supported by the logbook entries, which mention that MacArthur was emotionally disturbed in the days leading up to the disappearance, which is strange given his character. It is also suggested by the fact that working in isolation under such harsh conditions can cause severe psychological stress, which could have led to a violent episode. Nevertheless, no signs of a struggle or violence were found inside the lighthouse or its surroundings. A less violent but equally disturbing version of the previous theory is that the three keepers suffered from a form of collective madness or psychosis. The extreme isolation and tension of living on a desolate island for weeks may have triggered a psychological breakdown in one or more of them. Isolation under such harsh conditions can cause serious psychological disorders, such as delusions or paranoia. This might explain why the men's behavior had changed, with MacArthur crying and Ducat acting unusually quiet. Despite all this, there is no concrete explanation of how collective psychosis could have resulted in the physical disappearance of all three men. In the realm of the supernatural, one of the most popular theories is that the keepers were abducted by aliens. This theory, although fantastical, has persisted in popular culture due to the inexplicable nature of the disappearance. It is suggested that the men were taken off the island by some non-terrestrial force, leaving the lighthouse intact and without signs of a struggle. This would explain why the bodies were never recovered. Another supernatural theory suggests that the three keepers were lured or attacked by sirens or some other mythical sea creature. This theory is based on ancient sailors' legends about mythical beings that inhabited the ocean waters and could lure men to their deaths. Some people argue that the fact that the keepers experienced a colossal storm on the island, but there is no meteorological record of such a storm in the area, could be possible signs of the intervention of mythical creatures. The disappearance of the three lighthouse keepers on the Flannan Isles remains one of the most unsettling mysteries in maritime history. Despite over a century of speculation and theories, what really happened in December 1900 remains an unsolved enigma. Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur left behind a scene that confounds both experts and mystery enthusiasts. Unmade beds, an untouched meal, a storm recorded in their logs that apparently never occurred, and no clear clues to their final fate. The only certainty is that the three men disappeared without a trace, and their bodies were never recovered. This mystery has inspired countless books, songs, movies, and documentaries, all of which have delved into the depths of this inexplicable event. Today, the lighthouse on the Flannan Isles still stands, though it has been automated and no longer requires the constant presence of keepers. Its connection to the disappearance of Marshall, Ducat, and MacArthur ensures that the place retains a mythical and, in some ways, sinister atmosphere. This mystery has withstood the test of time, continuing to captivate both experts and the curious alike. As physical evidence remains elusive and testimonies fade into history, it seems that the truth of what really happened on that remote island in 1900 may never be fully known.